If you are seeing this right now, understand this. It is not an accident. Nothing that reaches you in this life reaches you by chance. There is an order beneath the surface of things, an intelligence moving through every circumstance, every thought, every quiet nudge that draws your attention towards something you cannot yet fully explain. And the fact that you are here listening to these words in this exact moment of your life is itself a message. Let that sink into your spirit before we go any further. You did not stumble upon this by coincidence. Something inside you called this moment into being long before your conscious mind understood why. Think about this for a moment. How many times in your life has something arrived at the precise second you needed it? A word spoken by a stranger that answered a question you never asked aloud. A memory that surfaced from nowhere just before a decision that would change everything. A feeling, sudden and undeniable, that told you to wait or to move or to let go. These are not random firings of a chaotic mind. These are whispers from the deeper self, the true self, the one that already knows what your outer mind has not yet caught up to. And right now, that same deeper self is speaking to you again. It is telling you that change is coming. Not small change, not the kind you can ignore or push aside with busyness. Big change, the kind that reshapes the architecture of your life from the inside out. You must realize that the outer world you experience is never the origin of your life. It is only the reflection. Everything you see around you, the relationships, the work, the body, the circumstances you call your reality, these are simply the visible edges of something invisible, something that took shape long before it ever became flesh and form. This is the truth that has been hidden in plain sight, whispered through scripture, encoded in parables, spoken by every awakened teacher who ever walked this earth and tried to explain what most people could not yet hear. Consciousness is the only reality. Everything else is shadow cast by that first and final light. Feel this deeply, because it changes everything once it is understood. You are not a victim of your circumstances. You are not a passenger being carried along by forces outside your control. You are the very ground from which your circumstances arise. Your assumptions, your inner conversations, your quiet and often unnoticed beliefs about who you are and what you deserve. These are the seeds from which your entire visible world grows. And when a shift begins to stir within you, when something ancient and dormant starts to awaken beneath the noise of daily life, the outer world has no choice but to respond. It must respond. It always does. This is not mysticism removed from logic. This is law. As within, so without. As above, so below. The inner state always, without exception, moves outward into form. So when you feel this pull, this unshakable sense that something in your life is about to shift, trust it completely. You are not imagining it. You are not being dramatic or impatient. You are simply becoming aware, perhaps for the first time with such clarity, of a movement that has already been set into motion within the deeper layers of your being. The change you are sensing is not something that is going to happen to you from the outside. It is something that is already happening within you, and the outer evidence is only now beginning to catch up. Let this settle within you. Before anything changes in your outer life, something must first change in your inner world. Before the new job appears, a new self-concept must already exist. Before the relationship transforms or ends or deepens, a new emotional truth must already be alive within you. Before the body heals, the health, the wealth, the peace you long for takes physical shape. The assumption of already possessing it must first live and breathe inside your imagination. This is the secret that has been taught for thousands of years in every sacred text, hidden beneath layers of literal interpretation that cause so many to miss its true and living meaning. The kingdom of God is within you, not somewhere beyond the clouds, not in some distant future reward. Within you, right now, in this very moment, waiting to be recognized and claimed. Understand this. The changes that are approaching your life are not punishments, and they are not random disruptions meant to test your patience. They are the natural and inevitable unfolding of the inner shifts you have already been making, some consciously, many unconsciously. Through the quiet evolution of your own awareness, you have been growing. You have been releasing old identities that no longer fit who you are becoming. You have been questioning beliefs that once felt permanent but now feel strangely foreign, like a coat that no longer fits your shoulders. And every one of those inner movements has been silently rearranging the architecture of your outer world, brick by invisible brick, until now, when the change becomes undeniable, when it finally breaks through the surface and becomes visible to your physical eyes. Consider this: the caterpillar does not consciously decide in a single dramatic moment to become a butterfly. The transformation begins long before there is any outward sign of change. It begins in stillness, in surrender, in a kind of inner dissolving that looks from the outside like nothing is happening at all. And then, seemingly out of nowhere, wings emerge. But nothing about that emergence was sudden. It was the final, visible expression of a process that had been unfolding invisibly the entire time. This is precisely what is happening within you now. The changes you are about to witness in your outer life are the wings finally breaking through the chrysalis of an old identity that could no longer contain the truth of who you have become. You are not the same person you were a year ago. You may not even be the same person you were a month ago, though your outer circumstances have not yet caught up to reflect that inner evolution. This is often the most disorienting stage of transformation, the gap between who you have become within and what your life still outwardly appears to be. It can feel like living in two worlds at once. Internally, you sense expansion, clarity, a new and steadier center of gravity. Externally, the old patterns, the old relationships, the old routines seem to persist, stubborn and unmoved, as if nothing has changed at all. But understand this: that gap is not evidence that your transformation is not real. That gap is simply the natural delay between cause and effect, between the invisible and the visible, between the seed being planted and the harvest breaking through the soil. Notice what happens when you stop demanding that the outer world change first before you allow yourself to feel different. Notice the shift in your entire being when you decide once and for all that you will no longer wait for permission from your circumstances to feel the peace, the confidence, the joy that you know is your birthright. This decision, small as it may seem, is one of the most powerful spiritual acts a human being can perform. It is the reversal of a lifetime of conditioning that taught you the outer world creates your inner state. The truth, once fully understood and lived, dismantles that illusion completely. Your inner state creates your outer world, not the other way around, never the other way around. This is why so many people remain trapped in cycles of repeating circumstances, wondering why the same patterns of disappointment or struggle or lack seem to follow them from one chapter of life to the next, even when the external details change. New job, same frustration. New relationship, same loneliness. New city, same restlessness. The details rearrange themselves, but the underlying pattern persists because the inner state that generated those patterns has never actually been transformed. The furniture has been rearranged, but the room itself remains the same. Real change, lasting change, the kind of change that does not simply repeat old suffering in a different costume, must begin at the level of identity. It must begin with a fundamental shift in who you believe yourself to be. Imagine for a moment what it would feel like to already be the version of yourself who has moved through this transition with grace, not the version who is anxiously waiting for change to arrive, checking the horizon obsessively, exhausting themselves with worry about when and how it will happen. But the version who has already arrived on the other side of this transformation, who is already living in the fullness of what is coming, who looks back on this exact moment you are living in right now with a quiet, knowing smile, because they remember what it felt like to stand at this threshold, uncertain but trusting. That version of you already exists. Understand this fully. In the timeless dimension of consciousness, Every version of you that could possibly exist already exists right now in this eternal present moment that mystics and prophets throughout history have tried desperately to describe with the limited language available to them. The future self you are becoming is not something you must wait years to meet. It is a state of consciousness available to you right now, in this very instant, the moment you choose to occupy it in your imagination and feel its reality as though it were already true. This is the deepest secret of manifestation, though the word itself has become so commercialized, so stripped of its sacred origin, that many have forgotten what it truly means. To manifest is not to beg the universe for favors. It is not to chase after external things with desperate hope. To manifest is to become, in consciousness, the person to whom the desired experience naturally belongs. It is an inside job entirely. It always has been. It always will be. Assumption creates experience, not wishing, not hoping, not even working harder in the external sense, though right action certainly has its place. Assumption, the deep, felt, embodied conviction that something is already true. This is what shapes the clay of your reality into the form your soul has been quietly sculpting all along. The truth is, you have been preparing for this moment for a very long time, even if you were not consciously aware of the preparation. Every disappointment that once felt unbearable was quietly stripping away illusions that could not survive the light of your awakening. Every ending that broke your heart was making space for a beginning your smaller self could never have imagined. Every season of confusion, of not knowing which way to turn, of feeling lost in a fog with no visible path forward, was actually a season of deep inner reconstruction. Even though it did not feel like construction at the time, it felt like collapse. But understand this, sometimes what feels like collapse is actually the falling away of a false structure so that a truer one can finally be built. Let that settle within you. The pain you have carried was never wasted. The waiting you have endured was never empty. Every moment of your life, even the ones soaked in confusion and grief, was contributing silently to the person you are becoming right now, in this very moment of recognition. And that person, the one reading or listening to these words with a quiet ache of recognition in their chest, is standing at the edge of something enormous. You can feel it, can't you? That restless energy beneath your ribs, that sense that the ground beneath your feet is about to shift in a way that cannot be undone. That feeling is not anxiety, though it may masquerade as anxiety if you do not understand its true source. That feeling is anticipation. It is the soul recognizing its own imminent expansion before the mind has caught up to explain it. Consider the biblical story of the Exodus not as a distant historical account, but as a living psychological and spiritual pattern that repeats itself endlessly within every human soul that dares to grow. Before the promised land could be reached, there had to be a wilderness. Before the wilderness could be crossed, there had to be a leaving behind of everything familiar, even the familiar suffering of bondage, because familiar suffering can feel safer to the untrained mind than unfamiliar freedom. This is why so many people remain in situations that no longer serve them, why they cling to identities that have long since stopped fitting who they truly are. The wilderness is uncomfortable, the wilderness is uncertain, but the wilderness is also the only path that leads to the promised land. There is no shortcut around it. There has never been a shortcut around it. Every soul that has ever transformed has had to walk through its own wilderness first. If you are in a season that feels like wilderness right now, understand this: you are not lost. You are exactly where you need to be in order to arrive exactly where you are meant to go. The wilderness is not punishment, it is preparation. It strips away everything that cannot survive the promised land, everything too small, too fearful, too attached to old definitions of who you are supposed to be. And when that stripping away feels painful, when it feels like loss, remember that the caterpillars dissolving inside the chrysalis must also feel, from its own limited perspective, like a kind of death. But it is not death, it is metamorphosis. It is the necessary unmaking that precedes every true remaking. You are not who you were. Let that truth wash over you completely. You are not who you were, and you are not yet who you are fully becoming. And that in-between space, uncomfortable as it may feel, is sacred ground. It is the threshold. It is the place where old identities dissolve and new ones have not yet fully solidified. And it is precisely because you are standing on that threshold that you are sensing so powerfully that something big is coming. Your soul already knows what your circumstances have not yet revealed. Trust that knowing. Trust it even when the evidence around you has not yet changed to confirm it. Especially then, faith, real faith, the kind that moves mountains and transforms lives, is not belief in what is already seen. It is conviction in what is not yet seen, but is nevertheless already true in the unseen realm of consciousness. This is why the great teacher of imagination once said that faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Read that again and let it penetrate deeply. The evidence exists before the physical proof arrives. The evidence is the feeling. The evidence is the inner conviction, so complete and so undisturbed that it requires no outer confirmation to remain steady. This is the kind of faith you are being called to cultivate right now in this season of your life. Not faith that waits anxiously for proof before it commits to believing, but faith that believes first, fully, without reservation, and allows the proof to arrive later, as it always must, because the outer world has no power to resist a conviction held with unwavering consistency in the imagination. You must realize that your imagination is not idle fantasy. It is not childish daydreaming disconnected from the serious business of real life. Your imagination is the very womb of creation. It is the workshop of God within you, the place where every invention, every relationship, every circumstance you have ever experienced first took shape before it ever appeared in the physical world. Nothing has ever entered your outer reality that did not first exist as an image, a feeling, an assumption within your inner world. This is not poetic exaggeration. This is the literal mechanics of how consciousness operates. And once you understand this, once you truly feel the weight and the power of this truth, you can never again see your imagination as something separate from your real life. Your imagination is where your real life begins. Everything else is simply the echo, the delayed reflection, the physical world finally catching up to what has already been decided within. So when you sense that big changes are approaching, ask yourself honestly what you have been assuming about yourself in the quiet, unguarded moments of your inner life. Not what you have been saying out loud, not the affirmations you repeat mechanically without feeling, but what you have actually been assuming deep beneath the surface in the moments when no one is watching and your guard is down. Because that is where your true creative power lives. That is the state from which your future is being continuously shaped, moment by moment, whether you are consciously directing it or not. The good news, and it is extraordinarily good news, is that you can begin directing it consciously, starting right now in this very instant. Allow yourself to see the life that is trying to emerge through you. Not the life you think you should want because someone else told you it was the correct path. Not the life that looks impressive from the outside but leaves you feeling hollow within. But the life that makes your soul exhale with relief the moment you imagine it. The life that feels like coming home to yourself rather than performing for an audience. That life is not a fantasy. It is a genuine possibility already alive within the field of consciousness, waiting only for you to claim it with the same certainty you currently apply to more limited beliefs about what is possible for you. Understand this. Every limitation you currently experience in your life is not a fixed law of the universe. It is simply a belief that has been repeated so many times, held so consistently, that it has taken on the appearance of solid facts. But beliefs are not facts. Beliefs are simply thoughts you have practiced until they became automatic. And what has been practiced into automaticity can also be unpracticed, dismantled, and replaced with new thoughts, new assumptions, new convictions that serve the life you are truly meant to live, rather than the life fear once convinced you to settle for. This is the identity shift that must happen before the outer changes can fully take root. You cannot continue to think of yourself as someone who struggles, someone who is unlucky, someone who always ends up disappointed, and expect your outer life to suddenly produce a different result. The outer world is simply mirroring back to you the beliefs you hold about yourself with the most consistency and the deepest emotional conviction. This is not cruelty on the part of the universe. It is precision. It is law operating exactly as law must operate, without favoritism, without exception, offering back to each consciousness exactly what that consciousness has assumed to be true about itself and about life. Feel this deeply, because it is the turning point that so many people circle around for years without ever fully crossing. The moment you stop asking the universe to prove itself to you before you will believe, and instead begin believing first fully with your whole being, as though the proof already existed, that is the moment everything begins to shift, sometimes so subtly at first that you almost miss it, and then seemingly all at once in ways that leave you breathless with recognition. This is what people mean when they speak of things happening gradually and then suddenly. The gradual part was happening inside you the entire time, invisible to the outer eye. The sudden part is simply that invisible work finally breaking the surface, becoming undeniable, becoming real in the way the physical senses can finally perceive. You are being prepared right now for something your current self cannot fully comprehend, and that is not a limitation to be afraid of. That is simply the nature of growth. If you could fully understand right now exactly what is coming, it would mean you had not yet grown beyond your current capacity to receive it. The mystery is part of the process. The not knowing is not evidence that something has gone wrong. It is evidence that you are being stretched beyond the boundaries of your previous self into a version of you capable of holding more, becoming more, receiving more than you have ever allowed yourself to receive before. Think about this for a moment. Every major transformation in your past arrived in a form you could not have predicted in advance. If someone had described to you years ago the exact shape your growth would eventually take, you likely would not have recognized it, or you might even have resisted it, because the mind clings fiercely to what it already knows, even when what it knows no longer serves it. This is why surrender is such a crucial part of every genuine transformation. Not surrender in the sense of giving up, but surrender in the sense of releasing your grip on how you think things must unfold, and trusting instead the deeper intelligence that has been orchestrating your growth all along, often in ways far wiser than your conscious mind could have designed on its own. Let this settle within you. The changes coming into your life are not arbitrary. They are not disconnected from the person you have been becoming. They are the direct, inevitable, and precise outgrowth of every inner shift you have already made, every belief you have already released, every old identity you have already outgrown, whether you did so consciously through deliberate practice or unconsciously through the simple passage of time and lived experience. Your soul has been doing this work continuously, even during the seasons when your conscious mind felt stuck, felt stagnant, felt as though nothing was moving at all. Nothing that grows does so visibly every single day. The seed beneath the soil shows no outer sign of movement for what can feel like an unbearably long time. And yet beneath that stillness, roots are forming, structure is developing, life is organizing itself in preparation for the moment it will finally break through into the light. You are that seed, and you are also that light, and the darkness of the soil you have been moving through was never your enemy. It was your incubator. It was the necessary hidden space where your true form could take shape, protected from premature exposure, protected from forces that might have disrupted your development before you were ready to withstand them. Understand this, and let gratitude begin to soften whatever resentment you may still be carrying toward the difficult seasons of your life. Even the hardest chapters were serving your becoming, though it may take time, sometimes years, before you can see clearly how every piece fit together with such precision. Feel this deeply. You are being called now into a new level of self-trust, not trust that everything will simply work out because of blind optimism, but trust rooted in the understanding of spiritual law, in the recognition that consciousness truly is the only reality, and that your inner state truly does determine your outer experience. This is not wishful thinking. This is the operating principle behind every transformation that has ever occurred in human history, whether the person experiencing it understood the mechanics behind it or not. Some people manifest tremendous change without ever using the word manifestation, simply because they held an unshakable inner conviction about who they were and what they deserved, and the world had no choice but to rearrange itself around that conviction. You can do the same. You are doing the same right now in this very moment by allowing yourself to receive this message with an open heart rather than a skeptical mind. Skepticism has its place, but it is not the doorway through which transformation enters. Transformation enters through receptivity, through the willingness to consider that your life could be larger, richer, more aligned with your true nature than you have previously allowed yourself to believe. This willingness is itself a spiritual act. It is an act of humility and courage intertwined. The humility to admit that your previous beliefs may have been too small, and the courage to imagine something greater in their place. Notice what happens within your body as you continue listening to these words. Notice whether there is a quickening, a subtle shift in your breath, a warmth spreading through your chest, or perhaps tears gathering behind your eyes for reasons you cannot fully explain. These physical sensations are not incidental. They are signs that something within you is recognizing truth, resonating with a frequency it has always known, but perhaps forgotten how to access consciously. Trust these sensations. They are more reliable guides than the anxious chatter of the analytical mind, which so often clings to old limitations simply because they are familiar, and familiarity, to the untrained mind, often masquerades as safety. You are safe to expand. Let that truth land fully within you. You are safe to become more than you have been. You are safe to release identities that once protected you, but no longer serve the fullness of who you are becoming. You are safe to imagine a life larger than the one your circumstances have currently confirmed. Nothing about spiritual growth requires you to abandon safety. It requires you only to redefine what safety truly means, moving from the false safety of staying small and unseen to the true safety of standing fully in your power, rooted in the unshakable knowledge that your inner state, not your outer circumstances, determines the quality and direction of your life. The truth is, the version of you who has already moved through this transformation is cheering you on right now, even if you cannot consciously hear that cheering. That future self, already living the life your soul has been quietly constructing, is not separate from you in the way linear time suggests. In the deeper reality of consciousness, past, present, and future exist simultaneously, woven together in a way the logical mind struggles to grasp, but the awakened heart intuitively understands. When you imagine your desired future with feeling, with conviction, with the sense that it is already real, you are not fantasizing about something distant. You are tuning into a frequency that already exists, and by tuning into it consistently, you begin to draw its reality closer into your present experience until the gap between imagination and manifestation collapses entirely. This is why the practice of feeling rather than simply thinking is so essential to genuine transformation. The mind can construct elaborate visions of a better future, but if those visions are not accompanied by genuine feeling, by the emotional conviction that this future is already true, they remain powerless, mere mental exercises disconnected from the creative force of consciousness. But when you allow yourself to feel, truly feel, the peace of already having resolved what once troubled you, the joy of already living the life your heart has been quietly requesting, the confidence of already being the person you have always sensed yourself capable of becoming, something shifts at a level far deeper than intellectual understanding. The subconscious mind, which does not distinguish between vividly imagined experience and physical experience, begins to accept this feeling as true, and once accepted at that deep level, it must by law begin expressing it